All right, I'll call the meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. First item is to adopt tonight's agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt tonight's agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. We have an agenda. Item 3, approve the minutes from the November 14th, 2023 meeting.
So moved.
I'll second it.
All right, a motion has been made and seconded to approve the minutes for the November 14th meeting. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the minutes are passed. Item 4, park financial information. Nate, you want to summarize?
Yep. Park Capital Fund, shown there before you. We have a current balance of $36,000 in Park Dedication Fund and $140,000 in the Park Capital Fund. That's how we finished up 2023. I do not have an operations budget for you this month because they were wrapping up everything for year end, but I did meet with the finance director today and we came in at 98%, so we came in just under budget. Most of that was from last spring's snow plowing, and some of our actual patching hours come out of that too. So between our two public works budget, we came in right at 100% this year, which thank goodness we had a mild December because we would have been over if we had some major snowstorms. So got in just under our teeth on that one, but everything looked good on that. Any questions on any of the capital funds at all?
I have a question, but it's for future, not for right now. Are we gonna end up having to hire another temporary as we go forward with all these additional parks and things that?
Right now, we're
We're
okay
looking
with 2. If we get some development in Capstone and that area down there with some more parks, we might have to look at getting another seasonal part-time employee. Yep. We're doing a cost analysis study on what it's gonna cost the city as development occurs. And that's one of the items we have on there is potential for another employee at some point.
Okay.
The seasonal employee you're talking about right now?
For mowing, it'd be seasonal, correct, yep.
Okay.
We also did an analysis on what it would take for a full-time employee. You guys are familiar with the Capstone and Elevage. That came up to be about 1/8 of a snowplow route, so we need, 8 more of those developments to require another snowplow route. So, kind of gives you an idea from our standpoint what it's gonna cost.
Yeah, that helps.
We did a calculation on what it's gonna cost for mowing and all that down there too, each week, so.
Okay.
We'll get more into detail on these capital funds as we get into our next few meetings. When we start doing the capital planning too, we'll get more into the weeds on some of that stuff. We do have a little bit of a carryover in this park capital fund that we'll go over at that point too.
All right, anybody have any questions or anything on the park financials? If not, let's move on to item 5, 2024 athletic field requests.
Consider approval of the 2024 athletic field requests. The City of East Bethel has received ball field requests for regular weeknight use from Soderville Blaine Athletic Association, St. Francis Youth Baseball, St. Francis Fast Pitch, as well as one weekend tournament. SBAA is requesting the use of fields 1 through 8 at Booster West and East from April 15th to July 23rd or July 13th, 4 nights a week, Monday through Thursday. They are requesting use of the baseball field Monday through Thursday from June 3rd to August 1st. They are also requesting the concession stand for the entire season. St. Francis Youth Baseball is requesting 2 fields a night on Tuesdays and Thursdays from April 30th to July 25th, and a tournament the weekend of May 31st to June 2nd. St. Francis Fast Pitch is requesting 4 fields on Tuesdays and Thursdays from April 22nd to June 30th, and 3 fields a night on Mondays and Wednesdays for that time frame. The East Bethel Bandits would like to use the baseball field 1 night a week beginning from the beginning of the season until May 31st. And at the time we wrote this, we did not have any more requests, but since then we had a request from a club team for Mondays and Wednesdays for a practice field. and for some additional nights for the East Bethel Bandits to use the baseball field, so we've added those. So the schedule you have in your packet is a little bit, we made a couple changes to that. And there's a group called the Rum River Rovers, which is a vintage baseball team. They're gonna do a tournament here in May as well, and that was an open weekend, so. We tried to accommodate as best we could. Give you what we got here. So this is our current working schedule that we're using. So SBAA, if they could, they would take all 8 fields every night. So, but we have too many other requests for it, and they're okay with this setup. In the past, they had kind of taken all of them and then they would sublease them out to these other organizations. So right now, we're just charging everybody the same amount, and we're handling it all through our scheduling. St. Francis Youth Baseball is the green squares on there. The red is the St. Francis Fast Pitch. The Bandits are in the pink there on the baseball field, which is the bottom one. May 18th is a Rum River Rovers vintage baseball tournament at Booster West. And then this blue that we see, sorry, go ahead.
Remember, the Rovers are only gonna use the four
Four.
multi-purpose, they're not gonna use the baseball diamond?
Nope, they're gonna play on the softball skin infields.
Yeah, they've played before. We've seen them
Yeah,
practice
just
and
Yeah,
stuff.
yep. They've, quite a few years now they've been requesting. So this Minnesota Speed is a new team this year for our fields. In the past, it was the Snowcats was the big user. They had a few teams that wanted to use it. We might start kind of running into this in the future, these club teams requesting fields. The one hang up is it's basically the club team is just one team, whereas these other organizations are the entire organization wanting to use the field, so there's multiple teams involved. We're trying to kind of move the club teams off to some of our other fields, like the Minnesota Smoke moved down to Maynard Peterson, and they're going to be using that. I brought that up to the Minnesota Speed, and they're interested in looking at either Bondi or Northland Manor
Nice.
as a field. So they're going to try out this year at Booster Park, and then maybe we can try and get them over to one of them other fields, and then.
Where are
maybe-
they based out of?
I think they're local. I guess the manager of the team lives down in Coon Lake Beach too.
We do get lots of
Curious.
compliments on our baseball fields, if you go to those tournaments and stuff.
So we didn't make everybody happy, but we tried to get as many of the requests in there as we could. By far, this is the biggest users of our park system, so this is a big issue. If you guys have all seen Booster Park and the weeknights out here, it's packed.
I think you've done a great job of putting together a schedule that makes everybody a little bit happy and not everybody all the way happy.
It's pretty similar to what we've done in the past too, so there's not gonna be any big surprises to anybody. And actually, with the Minnesota Smoke leaving, or not the Smoke, the Snowcats, it actually opened up a little bit more for the other teams too, which I think is good. And we only have 2 tournaments planned. The baseball, St. Francis baseball, they're just gonna use 1 through 5, and then the baseball field. And the other tournament was SBAA's kind of year-end. Actually, they didn't even have that one on there, did they? I think that's the only tournament we had. Oh, the Rum River Rovers tournament. There used to be a huge fast pitch tournament that took place in middle of June, and we'll see if that comes back. But like Tim was saying earlier, that one takes a lot of planning, so we might not have that one again this year.
The city's costs are pretty much covered by the rates.
Yeah, I mean, we probably come up a little bit short. We estimate around $6,500 to keep up the ball fields annually. This year, what's kind of nice is the SBAA is hoping to get the concession stand back up and open and running. We kind of have an issue without somebody running that concession stand. There's nobody there to unlock the bathrooms and lock them up each night with the different organizations. There's no one lead organization. If they take over the concession stand, we can give them the keys to the bathroom, and then they're responsible for locking and unlocking the bathrooms too. That was one of the complaints we had last year, was the bathrooms were locked during the games at night. So,
Yeah.
and we don't have anybody that we're paying to come in and unlock them and lock them up. So,
Did the seniors not do that at one point along the way?
Not that I've ever,
Not that I remember.
I'm just wondering if it, maybe I'm thinking Ham Lake for some reason, but I'm just wondering if we were in a bind, if it's something that they might be.
possibility. They're, I know they're getting a little bit more, involved, people getting back involved with it now.
Starting to.
Probably talked to Allison into doing it. He's got a lot of other stuff he's doing.
Well, he does everything else going
Yeah.
on.
Do you know how our rates, our city rates here that we charge compared to neighboring communities?
We, so we looked at them, I think it was last year when we were
Yeah,
talking
I think
about
we were looking
our
at
rates.
raising our rates, weren't we?
We were kind of in the middle. There was some that charged more, like Ham Lake, it does not charge, but they do not do any work on the fields then either. SBAA has
And you
all
can
their
tell.
fields, and they have to come in and drag them and chalk them. They pay somebody to do that. I don't know, I can't remember when we did that analysis. We had a list of all the other,
Been a couple of years ago now. I
I'm
think.
thinking it was 2, I don't think.
might have been 2 years ago.
I think we
don't
talked
know.
about it last year,
last
but we didn't do have the breakouts.
Maybe we wanna look at next year, bump it
Yeah.
up a little bit, or revisiting it.
At the time I recall, we were kind of right in the middle.
Do you remember the last time our rates did go up a little bit?
No.
So it's
been a
probably,
long time.
whatever they're at, it's probably been pretty stable for a while.
Yep.
It's been stable for a long time.
Well,
And if we've got good demand and, you know, we can turn that money and reinvest it back into the parks too, you
I
know.
think it's been like 4 or 5 years probably.
Well, at least make sure that we're covering all the city's costs.
Yep, it's kind of a balance between covering our costs and keeping costs down for the residents and the families.
Well, and I
Right.
know SBA they brought in the chalk and stuff, didn't they?
Yep, they pay for the chalk on the fields, yep. And we charge it back to the other organizations, or make them replenish it if they use any. Probably have that somewhere pretty easy. I'll look up that sheet and send it out to everybody on email tomorrow to see it, so it's when it's fresh in our minds.
Do you need us to vote on this right now then, Nate?
Yeah, if you would, if you make a recommendation, then we'll send out the invoice and bill all these teams, so they know, and then they can set their schedule for what they have for fields in.
I'll make a motion to approve the schedule for fields as submitted.
I'll second the motion.
All right, the motion has been made and seconded to approve the 2024 athletic field request. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And field requests are approved.
I think you did a great job with that, Nate.
Yeah,
Thanks.
you make it
Thank
easy
you.
when it's,
Especially in older people, because when it breaks out by month and week, we can read it.
Yeah.
Item 6, sidewalk and trail ordinance review.
Could always ask for larger print.
Yep.
Then it'd be like 11 by 14 pieces of
Yeah.
paper. Then we'd have to pay.
Item 6.0, review and recommend any updates to section 66-165 sidewalks and trails. Attaches section 66-165 of the city code that guides the installation of sidewalks and trails in new developments. The ordinance requires sidewalks and trails to be installed on new city roads based on the type of zoning for that development and the type of street being built. The city council decides on any exceptions from the ordinance. Staff is requesting a review of the ordinance and if needed, any recommended updates or revisions. So I've included that there with, as attachment 1, the current ordinance. And basically what it says is any new development that goes in East Bethel has to have a trail on, or a sidewalk on one side of the street. And it's based on what the zoning is and what type of street it is, with the exception of cul-de-sacs. Now, I think we've talked about this quite a bit.
yeah, I've brought this one up a lot with, especially some of our smaller developments that we put in. You know, we're not putting trails in those developments as we do it. And my wonderings or my thoughts kind of go on you know, I know there's a clause in there that says something about city council can decide on the exception, but what if the ordinance was written such that if they decided that, there was something like like we think of a park dedication fund kind of thing?
In
where
lieu
there
of
was
trail.
in lieu of a trail, there was a fee that went towards a trail fund or something, and we start to build our trail budget back up. The one that was, I think it was taken away from us,
Yep.
what,
Yeah.
7, 8 years ago?
Quite a,
So,
well,
you know,
yeah.
what if we use this as a method to start to do that? And, you know, I'm all for trails. Of course, being on this committee especially, we hear about it all the time. But maybe it doesn't have to be along the street in some of these developments.
In the
Maybe it could
smaller
be,
ones,
maybe it could be a trail that's built, is it the Strandland Farm one? Where there was a way to make it go back up and kind of connect up to the Bondi Trail eventually or whatever, and it kind of snakes through development as the development was built. So I'm just, I guess, looking for ideas on
Well, we know
what
how
you
hard
guys
it is
think.
to do a trail after a development is put in.
Exactly. So,
And the resistance that we've had even when we own the property and they
Right.
tell us they don't want it in their neighborhood, so.
Yeah.
right. So, you know, if city council was going to say, hey, we're gonna approve this plat without the trail, what if there was a fee or something that could go into a trail fund that could be used for a trail, maybe somewhere else in that development or near that development? I don't know.
Or back into the trail budget.
Or would it be taken away because it was
Yes,
just sitting
or,
there?
Right,
Or
we've had that
exactly.
happen too.
I don't like having an ordinance that city council can say,
That's not
oh, I'm
followed.
gonna make an exception to that.
Which we've had
Because once they
happen.
make that exception, you're setting a precedence for all developments.
Open
Right.
the
Yep.
door.
So if there was a way, and it's, you know, I almost think of it as a compromise, you know.
Of course, as a developer, I would say, well, isn't that part of the negotiating with whether you get the money for a park dedication or a park? You know what I'm saying? Like,
This is kind of separate from the park dedication, this is trail. This
right,
is
but I'm just saying
sidewalk.
Yeah.
that the developer's gonna be like, well, isn't that what we're negotiating here with the park dedication money? Like,
And it is separate.
I mean, I'm just thinking that
So
we need to
where-
clarify that on
Yes,
this ordinance.
Yeah, yes, we could, you know, I don't know if we could call it a trail dedication
Trail
fund
fee.
or trail fee or something like that. So if no trail is going in on a development and our ordinance says that trails have to go in on a rural residential or whatever, you know, so if that was compromised and not going in, then, you know, there's a fee in lieu of that trail that we could put towards a fund.
Versus just being said, well,
An exception,
You don't
an
have
automatic exception made.
okay,
It would give us that leverage to say, no, you know, yes, we can make an exception, but if we make the exception,
Here's what
because
needs
the
to
trail
happen.
doesn't make sense in that area, we're still gonna charge you for that, what that trail could have been, or a portion of.
Right.
Maybe it's not 100%, or maybe it is, I don't know.
I know there are cities that do exactly what you're describing. Andover has a trail fee on top of, or dedication fee and a park dedication fee for all new developments. There's a lot of cities that have that. It's something we could definitely look at.
Well, it helps
doing.
with the maintenance of the trails too, because you'll have that fund to fix whatever.
And with
gets
any
broken.
negotiation, the city council they can negotiate that up. They could, right now, if they wanted to, they could negotiate out park dedication fees. They can negotiate a lot of that stuff out if they wanted to, but.
yeah, it's not binding to them, it's just
Right,
a guideline.
yeah.
So then would we do a percentage or would we do a flat fee?
That's what we'd have to look into.
You'd have to figure it out, I suppose, based on,
The development.
So it's
the
some of the other
development, the
communities are
density
doing.
of the development. You know, if it was like the Viking Preserve, Viking Meadows now, that they're talking about, you know, you get smaller lots, so, you know, maybe have to be a different amount. You know, I look at the neighborhood I live in, I don't think it would make sense for there to be a trail that follows the streets. But there are a couple spots in that development where it would be cool if there was a little trail that kind of snuck around somewhere and make some walking loops, if you will, you
Yep.
know? So when I built the house that I'm in now, if I would've had to pay for a trail, that full amount, that full strip across my property, that would've put me over the edge of not being able to move out to East Bethel. But if the development would've said, okay, we're gonna assess each property, I don't know, $2,000 or whatever it might be, to put towards a trail in that area, we could've had a nice little walking trail that went and connected, my neighborhood, kinda connected and made some walking loops in that area, so.
Connect a couple cul-de-sacs or something, that you
Yeah.
can make a loop.
Which is how it was Whispering Oaks, no, which neighborhood was it that asked for a walking path and then? ended
Oak
up-
Brook Acres, it's
Yeah, Oak
off
Brook.
of Durant.
Same kind of thing there, it
Right.
might not make sense to have a trail through everybody's yard or whatever.
But a general
was a-
trail around the whole neighborhood.
Yeah, if I
Right.
remember right, it was kind of a horseshoe-shaped neighborhood, and if you connected those, if I remember, it was kind of
Outliers.
swampy back through there, but if you connected that up with a trail,
Yep.
using an allowance that was put into an ordinance like this one, I think that would make a lot of sense.
A little history on this ordinance too, it was developed in the mid-2000s and put into place in 2007. And at that time, development was booming. Houses were, they could write whatever check they wanted for some of the land they were buying. It was the peak right before the housing crash. And then after that point, we didn't have a development come into East Bethel for like 4 or 5 years. So some of this was kind of put on the back burner. They didn't want to discourage what few developments came in at the time, I think was part of it. And I don't think a lot of them knew that was even really on there, to be honest. But
Well, this was before I came on parks, so you two would be the only people probably to deal with it.
I think Councilmember Bill Boyer was a big champion of that.
Yep,
He
Yes,
was,
he
I
was.
recall.
so,
And I'm with Denise, I mean, once that development's in, if there's not a trail or a sidewalk,
It's
good
not
luck.
gonna
yeah,
happen.
we've seen that.
I mean,
People who are willing to leave their 4-year-olds in the backyard all by themselves, just to prove a
Yep.
point.
yeah, but, I certainly see the appeal to having the option of
A
a
separate
fee
fund.
versus a trail also, because there are some developments where the trail or sidewalk may not make sense, but we still should capture some revenue for trail.
Yeah,
That's something, we've struggled with trails for how long, because we've got no money to pay for them.
Forever, yeah.
Not forever.
so
And I
the
know
pro-
that's the number one thing people ask me about, because they wanna be able to bike all over and.
They do, but they don't want the trail going by their house.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and they wanna use biking, which we don't control.
Yeah.
And so they're like, well, how can we do it the back way? Well, there is no back way.
both the proposed new developments, Elevage and Capstone, have quite a few trails in them that connect a lot of things. We've kind of worked really hard on trying to look at what would make the most sense for people to use to access, any future development or making loops and things like that, so.
I think both of those have paid attention to accessibility for the residents that are gonna be buying.
And it's, both developers know that the trails are a big appeal to, people to buy a house
Yep.
and have places to recreate, passive recreation, walking and things like that.
Well, especially when you get into higher density.
Higher density is, yep.
That's,
That's why a lot of the trails don't make sense in some of our lower density neighborhoods with people have acreage, but when you get down there,
Right. Well, and then because we have to keep stopping, because we don't have the budget to keep going,
yeah.
they're like, they make all those comments about the trails to nowhere, but they do have a plan, they're just.
They're part of an overall plan with a regional trail from Russell County connecting everything at some point.
A few years back, I remember we had some of the snowmobile clubs come and talk too. And I know a snowmobile trail is a little bit different than the trails we're talking about here,
Yeah.
but one comment that they made that I always think about, and I do think it does mean the same thing in this case as off-street trails too. So if we can get trails that, as these developments are going in, that, connect weird little points, cul-de-sacs or whatever, to get some of that off-street trails for the communities, so that they're walking, not necessarily along the trail or along a road, I mean, they're off-street.
Right,
So,
right.
Nate, you mentioned, was it Andover has something similar?
Yes, yep.
I guess I'd be curious, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'd be curious to see, you know, a couple of our neighboring communities, what they have for
Yeah.
fees.
Yep, I can do some research and get that, no problem.
I'm sure that Elk River probably has something too, because they're kind of like us, booming in some areas and not in others.
Our daughter just moved into a new development in Andover, and the trails in that area are all off-street. They run more behind the houses rather than along the roads. So that's kind of a neat setup there. Then you're away from traffic and
Coon Rapids has some trails like that too, like around the Lions Park.
Mm-hmm.
They're not on actual Coon Rapids Boulevard, they're more off behind the park area. But that took 60, 70 years to plan, so.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, those higher density cities definitely have, Ramsey, Andover, Coon Rapids have a pretty extensive trail network.
I think Blaine does too now.
Blaine's is extending, yep. And part of that is with Anoka County, it's part of their regional comp plan to get trails. And we show these on our comp plan, but like I said, it's probably gonna be, we're real early on in this process. There'll be people long after we're gone still working on this.
Well, and we know it's had to change already based on the streets and water and wetlands and all that.
The big main one is the blue line here, that's the North Anoka County Regional Trail, that's still in Anoka County's long-term plan. That has funding from the state of Minnesota, so at some point that probably will be funded. They're just working their way north right now. I think the next one that they'll probably see in East Bethel is this extension along Lexington.
Mm-hmm.
They're working on bringing that up to Crosstown here in the next few years, and then from there it's up around the lakeside, so.
Is that when they'll redo the park down there then too, the beach?
The beach will be separate from this, but yeah, they're gonna do part of the trail, I think, with that. But it
Because I
won't
know they
connect
talked about
south yet.
widening the road and
Yeah.
doing some other stuff.
Are they straightening it out then? Or wrapping it back behind where that house used to be?
I don't think so.
Oh, dang.
I think
Not
they were
yet.
just planning on widening the road because it was built wrong. Is what I understood.
With the park improvements? Yeah, I think they're gonna add some wider shoulders through there and turn lane or something, I think, going
Yeah,
into the.
because it wasn't built for the way it's being used, or, so that might straighten it out a little bit.
You mean on those two curves that go around there? Is
Yeah.
that what you're talking
Where they have the
Yeah,
no
Yeah.
back
parking
in the
signs.
day, there was a lot of, I mean, I'm talking, oh, what? There was talk that they were going to pull that out, and there was a house that sat on that corner, the first corner coming this way, and they were gonna come back behind and loop it. That was the big talk back then.
Leave that house stranded?
No, the house is
Oh,
gone.
yeah.
No, but.
it was right on the corner. I think it was DNR owned it or something like that. It was
Mhm,
Oh.
yep.
housing for a park manager or something like that.
Yeah,
Oh,
in
yeah.
fact, I think Anderson lived there.
Like the fire warden or somebody, state
Some of
warden?
that, there's a
Yeah.
lot, there's a 5 or 10 acre lot right there. for
I think
sale.
it was a nice log building and everything, if I remember right.
Somebody bought that.
When did they buy it?
The Anoka County was gonna try and buy it, and somebody bought it right before they got around to getting to it.
I was thinking of buying it.
You were gonna buy it?
I was, looked at it. It's a
You-
little
are you
bit above
talking
my
like-
budget.
Are you talking like right next to the park on the inside of that kind of horseshoe?
It was right on, oh, I can't remember exactly the spot, but I know it was right out there somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right after one of those curves.
Yep.
Yeah, right across from Squint.
All right, so do we need to phrase this out some way to do a motion, or?
This one, I think for right now, we don't really have enough to make a motion on. I'll get you some numbers, and then I'm gonna kick it back to the planning commission too. to see if it's, what their thoughts are on it, just to get a discussion going. I've already talked to our community development director on it, and mentioned a little bit to our city administrator too, something we might be addressing here going forward, so.
Do you want a motion or anything on it?
I don't think we need a motion, just call it an informational item for tonight, and
Still talk with some of the surrounding communities and stuff then on there?
yeah, I'll get some data, and I guess if you wanted, it's up to you, if you wanna make a motion recommending, we don't really have an amount yet to put in there. Why don't we hold off till I get some more hard numbers? Then
Well, and
go
then
from
we
there.
can
Makes sense.
form a more, not an honest opinion, but
I think it'll be
Or
good, and to
motion.
have those numbers will be good, and then, you know, just to get something from those developments that are going in towards trails. Can't hurt, so.
I brought it up to our community development director as well, and kinda made sure he's letting, prospective developers know that this is part of our ordinance, and it could be enforced at any time too, so. Just
Okay.
get that ball rolling on some of those, someone doesn't get a big surprise about it, but.
Cool. Thanks, Nate. Item 7, council report and other business. Tim, you got anything for us?
Good evening. Tonight I'm going to do something a little bit different. If you guys have any questions that you want to ask me about what's going on, since we have a lot of fires in the iron, I'd be more than happy to answer anything or any questions that you have or any concerns. So I'll start out with that, and if you think of something, feel free to ask me, because I'm an open book when it comes to talking with our commissions. Second of all, listening to our discussion tonight about trails and sidewalks and so forth, I think it's great that we remove, with the exception of city council. The reason I'm saying that is because it does set a bad precedent if we start doing different things for different developers. I'd like to see that changed, and if we go forward with this, I'll champion that part of it, no problem, because I'd rather see what we talked about tonight, that a proportion or a part of or a fee goes into the trails and parks. Whether it be an estimation on how many feet of sidewalk or trail was supposed to go through that subdivision, maybe that's a starting point of what the charge might be. I don't know. We'll figure that out. But that's what I'd like to see happen when we start talking about formulating goals and what we want to accomplish this year. That's a big one, because we got some big stuff going on around the city, and that would certainly help not only raise money, it would make sure that developers know exactly what they're in store with when they, you know, put a plat together and so forth. If they don't want to have it in there and it's supposed to be in there, they're going to pay for something there. And picking and choosing is not the way to do it. And that's pretty much how I feel about that. These off-site trails, another good one to look at. I grew up in a town that had a lot of those, and it was great. It went behind the houses, it connected the neighborhoods, it was a safe place for kids. And with, you know, the communities out branching and, you know, gaining a lot more traffic, I think it's an excellent idea. So I'd like any ideas, I'd like to stay on top of that. And if we're gonna do anything this year for this city, I wanna make sure that our trails are covered, funds are coming in, we know where they're coming from, developers know ahead of time what they're gonna be paying, and that's it. There's no exceptions. I don't like doing exceptions. I don't like a lot of variances. We have a concept plan for this city. We have development rules and regulations that either we abide by or we start over and do it all again. And that's how I feel about it. I mean, we have things that are written down that the residents wanted, and if we need to change them, we'll change them. But we shouldn't have to change them every time a developer comes into town. Any questions tonight? Now's
we're
your
still
chance.
suffering from Christmas dinner, I think.
Yeah. One that comes to mind, Tim, and since we're talking about trails, is to bring back up the John Anderson little trail segment that was gonna be, I think, revisited.
Okay.
And, you know, I had that on my list anyway to ask you about. I think that there were some trees, Nate, if I remember right, that had to be trimmed in order to get that little, you know what little segment I'm talking about?
Right, I do.
And I think that if we're gonna trim those trees and have a chance at putting in a trail there in the near future, that we only have a couple months left here where we can trim oak trees. So
That's true.
what are the chances that we can engage that community member, that house there that lived on the corner? I think you met with them and come up with some sort of an agreement on that trail.
Yeah, we were out there. There was some concern with the next door neighbor and her having the trail so close to her house and her child's window right there. I do believe we talked about some fencing that could be possible, but at that time, it was unavailable to really do. We did have voices from both sides. And that's what's tough when you're sitting in the hot seat and you have some people saying they want it and some people don't. There again, the property was built with, they knew there was a park or a trail possibly being there. To accommodate everybody is going to be tough, but I really think because of where it's at and the location and what we've just talked about a little bit back and forth, we can revisit it with some positive ideas, and I'll talk with Nate a little bit more, and we'll probably sit down and go out and talk with him again and see what we can come up with to make sure that the neighbors where the trail is, they feel safe. At the same time, it connects across, to the bigger park. So there's a lot of benefits, that need to be looked at, but at the same time, take a lot of consideration for what the residents who live there want and try and put together a good package for them. I mean, we don't want to shove anything down anybody's throat and say you have to do this or have to do that. We want them to be comfortable with it, and I'm sure we're going to do everything we possibly can to try and make that happen.
When we look at John Anderson though, I think one of the biggest things that I think of is that not only has that been in planning for maybe 20 years or more, but it also is one of our bigger parks. So
Premier
that
parks, yeah.
I'm not just concerned about, what's going on in that little development, but the city as a whole, because of how it will connect into different areas.
Mm-hmm. Now, are you for that? You against that? You like that?
Well-
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, if we were gonna take a vote, I know how I would vote on
Me
it, if that's
too.
what you're asking.
Okay, well, I mean, it's key to, excuse me, it's key to know that what direction we want to move forward as a group and how we're going to do it. If we're for something like that, I mean, I'm all for trying to make it happen to the best of my ability. I mean, I'm your liaison. I asked for this again in the second year because I felt comfortable coming up here and talking to you and answering questions. At the same time, we did do a lot of improvements on John Anderson, didn't we?
Yeah, we built that whole trail system back in there, so this there's, a loop trail that comes all the way through here. This isn't the best map of it, but yeah, we added about half a mile of trails in there.
Yep, and the
Yeah,
goal was
turn
to
over the
join
days.
it to Bondi Park, so you could ride all the way
So the little
through.
connection piece would be this piece right here.
Do
So
you?
we'll see what we can do about making that happen. I mean, all we can do is try, and if it's in our plans for our city, we're gonna try and do, I think, the best we can for everybody involved.
Yeah, and I mean, we had the neighborhoods come in here and give us their opinion probably more than once.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like we didn't ask.
Right. I'm familiar with it. It was, some of it was before my time, but at the same time, like I'm saying, I'd like to sit down with Nate and see what trees are gonna go out of there, what we can do. I do believe they talked about a bridge going over a creek back there that I saw.
Yep.
And there was a couple different options for that, and it was a little bit pricey or out of our price at that time to do that. And we'll get everything in line and see what we can do. I mean, I'm all for trails. I like trails.
And I mean, it was something that's just the problem with all of our trails all the time. We get a plan going and then at some point, it falls apart because we either have to wait and then something will come up after that, which is what happened in this case, or there's not enough money. So this was something that
Or we have to wait for the county to give us the small little piece
There's
that.
just a lot of things.
Mhm.
But I mean, when we talk about the city wanting trails, this was one of the ones that we thought was
In the
really
top
gonna-
5, one that we
Yeah,
thought we could
this
get
was
done.
Not like a little thing for this committee, it was pretty big,
Right.
yeah.
My take on it, possibly, I don't know if you might agree, because this goes way back to vandalism and everything that went
Yeah.
down, and the nervous Nellies, and I'm just wondering if maybe a few people have been brainwashed that something terrible is gonna happen if you put a trail in.
I think the more you clean up an area, the less crime you have because it's visible.
If we could somehow educate them or help assure them that this was gonna be a positive thing.
You know, it was like, I don't know how long ago it was, but it was the park, we went out to that park one night, and it was, we all were concerned about the vandalism, and that very night, there were some people out there, you know, like selling drugs or something that very night. And so the issue was, you know, if it wasn't so rural, or that we could build up the community around there, it would be safer for everything. That was one of the other thoughts.
Well,
that
that's what
we-
I'm saying,
yeah.
maybe there's been because of the history, maybe a few people have been feared into that.
So
They're just feared of that history.
The trees that have to come down for that, where are they?
There's one large oak tree right about here,
Okay,
and there's 2 kind of smaller ones in here.
What
A couple really small ones. There's 3 oak trees that are kind of the issue. This one here is a big tree. We'll have to have a contractor do that one. These other ones we can take down ourselves.
what happens if we take those down this winter anyway, just because it's a good time to take the oak trees down, even if we don't go forward with this?
Yeah, I mean, we can. I already got quotes on this one, but we held them off. It was actually last spring, and that's when we were meeting with the one resident, and we just put it on hold, so.
But then at least if those are down, they're out of the way, that's one less roadblock we have
Yep.
towards moving
We
forward.
are ready.
And I mean, like I said, right now, this is public property. Anybody can use this, even without it being developed. You can access it, I guess.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Nate, but didn't we have that segment budgeted?
Yep.
At one point?
Yes.
And is that money still, the money is still there?
Somewhere
So-
else on the comp plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'm with Tim. Let's get the trees out of there. And then whatever we need to do, Tim, to get, have that discussion with that homeowner there, to get that to that next step.
And we certainly understand her reluctance. I mean, that does run close to the house.
Right.
I mean,
I also think, I don't know who said it out here, when you create a nice area and a nice trail through there that people are enjoying and using, the neighborhoods, I have a feeling that brings not only neighbors closer together, but it keeps the riffraff kind of out of there, rather than just put in I hate to say it, a half-ass kind of trail that doesn't look as great and is smaller or so forth. If we're gonna do it, I think we should do it right, do it with what we have budgeted, and work very closely with that neighborhood to make sure everyone's happy. I'm sure once it goes in, and if it goes in, I love coming out my front door, driving down the street and hooking into a trail and riding and going to another park. I grew up that way. That's why I can see it and I can envision it, and like you guys can right now. You know what it should look like. Now it's a matter of putting it all together and making the deal happen.
well, if we can get kids more access to the park without having them go on a main road of some sort, it's just a no-brainer.
Yeah, especially that park. That's a beautiful park. That's
It is.
beautiful back in there.
You can see the trails on here that we constructed. This was before they were paved, but essentially the trail goes around, down along the lake. And then this is an access road that we get back here for our little burn pit right here.
And I have no problem going out there and talking with that person again, with you or anyone else from this city. To her, it's a negative thing because of her child.
Mhm.
Totally get it, I understand it. But there's also a big picture here for the city that it was here ahead of time. And it was
Well-
part of the property. We've budgeted for it. I think it can be an excellent addition to the neighborhood, bringing it closer. That's my personal feelings on it. I don't know how the rest of council will feel on it, but
Well, I think for her, she's not the original owner of the house either, and, you know, sometimes when you buy a house, you don't pay attention to easements that are on the
Right.
property.
it's a beautiful piece of property. It's a beautiful house,
Absolutely.
you know?
Well, I can
It's,
tell you just from personal experience, pre-trail, post-trail, the foot traffic actually helps with the park.
Yeah.
Because we live on Booster, and so, you know, there's a lot more foot traffic now, but there's a lot less kids hanging out in the parking lot
Mm-hmm.
and on the playground equipment that are way too old to be on the playground equipment.
Well,
'Cause-
they're not there hanging out there to use the playground equipment.
right.
But definitely. Any other questions tonight?
Do we have anything about, we looked at the tennis courts and stuff at the community center at Coon Lake.
At Coon Lake.
So there were trees to be trimmed there. We looked at the concrete or, you know. So I know that's coming up, what, to do those repairs, but
Yep.
what are we responsible for and what is the community center responsible
The
for?
park itself is all city.
Yeah,
So even the sidewalks and stuff that were all wonky?
In the sidewalks and, yep, sidewalks and the basketball court, there's some concrete that's settled out.
Which was kind of ironic, because Nate and I had a conversation this afternoon. We're happy that Coon Lake's gonna be getting all that new equipment over there and so forth, and well-deserved. I mean, it's a great park. We talked about resurfacing. We're gonna look at that, because we
And
do
then
have,
fixing those
we have
tennis
money
courts?
available.
Yeah.
You know, and we had a lot of great suggestions from the residents who showed up at one of the bigger meetings I've gone to ever. And along with some of the lights and security and resurfacing it, and some of it, it's tough to play for kids on it, the way it is right now.
It's
It hasn't been
hard for
resurfaced.
anybody to get on that sidewalk. I
Right.
mean, literally.
My plan is to do, so unfortunately, I won't be available for the February meeting. So unless something comes up that they have to have a vote on, we probably won't have a February meeting. Otherwise, I could have one of my park lead guy come in and take care of it if we need to have a development or something to vote on. So I was planning on in March starting our capital improvement plan, but a big part of that was, what are we gonna do with the other $50,000 that we have budgeted?
Right, that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking of is,
For Coon
there
Lake?
were so many repairs that needed to be made.
Right,
We
I'm
need
gonna
to
need direction
pri-
from, so if you guys wanna kinda think that over in the next couple months and give us some direction on, cause we kinda had that skateboard park at Maynard Peterson was one of them, but then there was people that didn't want a skateboard park.
Right, they wanted the zip line.
Yep, and we only have 50,000, we don't have to do it all in one year, but we can add it on later in some of the stuff later on in the capital improvement plan
I don't know,
too.
I just keep thinking about that sidewalk. Somebody could trip and fall and that could be really bad.
We should be able to fix that on our own.
Do we just do something over the top or do you just pull it up?
Usually we either tip them up, or if it's one that's lifted, we'll break it out and just pour a new one in. That part's not bad, that's the basketball court, that's a lot more
And the
expensive.
tennis courts that were tennis/ice rink?
The one that's got the tennis net, that one's actually in pretty good shape, it's the other basketball court that's
Yep,
got the tipped up
exactly.
panel.
And those trees are gonna be taken care of, correct?
Yeah, we did already cut some, we're going down there to cut some more down this winter. Got a lot of tree cutting this year without the snow plowing, so.
Those trees were huge.
And I'll probably do, if you wanted to have an official talk on the John Anderson Trail, we should probably have that as an item, and I can invite some of the homeowners that maybe come into the meeting too to talk about it, would that make sense?
Yeah. Yes.
Sure.
Then I can get an official recommendation from everybody on that and direction.
Yeah, maybe we can send something out to everybody in the neighborhood, a flyer or something, make sure they're all aware of what's going on, and
Yeah.
so we
I
can
just-
hear them.
I just don't know how we're gonna make her feel safe. You know, that's,
She's
we talked
probably
about
gonna
a few
be,
things.
I mean, depending on what kind of fence you put up too, it's gonna block her view of the park, which may have been part of the
Well-
reason she bought the house in the first place.
Some of our discussions, she was understanding of a fence. It'd be a privacy fence, the whole length of the mowed area, which ups the cost a lot, but that's something we can talk about, but she was receptive to that idea.
Did we budget for that, bridge that was going over that?
This
creek?
little wetland area, we're gonna do a floating dock, boardwalk section. We have that. That actually wouldn't be too expensive. We have the pontoon floats already left over from another project.
Perfect.
It would just be the green treated lumber and,
Yeah, 'cause you weren't walking across that when we were out there. It was
yeah,
pretty-
different, some years you can,
Some years.
some years you can walk right across
Some,
there,
yeah.
other years it's flowing really well, so.
It's kinda like Cooper's Lake. Some years you can take your kayak out and not see anything, and some years you're pulling dining room tables out.
Yep, this is the drain from Cooper's Lake, so it comes out of Cooper Lake down into this wetland and then across through here into this big wetland.
All right, so you need a recommendation then? You said for the meeting?
No, that's just Tim's update and anything else he has.
That's my update. Like I said, my number's out there. Anytime you have a question about anything, feel free to give me a call. Any concern about anything, feel free to give me a call. But we've got a good starting point with a couple of good goals, and let's just keep that moving forward.
Our only goal, Tim, is money, money, money.
Bring it.
Trying.
Yeah, I'm not the only one that keeps asking.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Yep, thanks, Tim.
Nate, you got anything?
No, nothing else really happening right now. There's a fire relief association breakfast at the senior center on,
Senior center, no, at the fire station.
at the
Station
fire
one.
station. The sign was on January.
January 27th, I
7th.
think.
Yep.
And then, just, everybody slow down on the Highway 65. There's been a ton of accidents, so slow down, it's winter.
A couple rear ends on Crosstown and the stoplight there, I noticed the other day too.
You making any ice yet at the ice arena?
We are flooding and it melts and soaks into the ground, but hopefully this week now when it
It's
gets
supposed to
cold.
start heading
Well,
downward
yeah.
this week.
The whole thing's covered with ice right now, but it's not skatable yet. We gotta build it up now. We were
Okay.
able to get a crust on it and
One of the things I noticed on the Nextdoor app, people are asking about ice time for free skate. Do we have any, or is it pretty much booked up?
all of the prime time ice is for the most part booked. There is occasionally openings on there. You have to go through the Gibson management page to.
So there's nothing on our website, city website?
There's a link to Gibson's. You can go from, if you go to the ice arena page on our website, it'll link you to Gibson management page. And there's a schedule on there that shows all the ice times.
Okay.
There is no open skate. The youth hockey rented out a few of them and opened it up to open skate, but it was mainly kind of word of mouth. Hockey Association people that heard about it. It wasn't on our website. There was a New Year's Eve skate that was open to the public, and they are supposed to have one during the afternoons on Wednesdays, but we haven't had hardly anybody ever show up for them. So
Oh, it's in a weird time, isn't it, like 1 to
It's-
4 or something
yep,
like that?
it's not in the prime time. All the prime time ice is sold to help pay for the building, so it's all funded by the ice rentals. There's no tax dollars that go into the operation of that facility, so they have to try and sell as much as they can.
All right.
So,
That's all I had.
Anybody else? Have any other comments, questions?
Make a motion to end the meeting.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn the meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.